Lisa Carter walked slowly through the bright corridors of Star Station Aurora. The space station was huge and beautiful, with shiny walls and floors that sparkled under the lights. Rich people from all over the galaxy came here to shop and have fun. Lisa wore a simple blue dress and comfortable shoes. She carried a small bag and looked around with quiet interest. She had been married to Jake Morrison for 5 years now. Jake was famous across the galaxy as the greatest human military commander. He had saved Earth 3 times from alien attacks. Everyone knew his name and face. But Lisa liked to stay quiet and out of the spotlight. She preferred to be just another person walking around, not the wife of a hero. Today, she wanted to buy something special for Jake's birthday next week. She had heard about a fancy boutique called Stellar Elegance that sold beautiful clothes and jewelry. The shop was supposed to have the best items in the galaxy. Lisa found the boutique on the upper level of the station. The front of the shop was made of clear glass and she could see expensive clothes hanging inside. Golden lights made everything look magical. She took a deep breath and walked through the automatic doors. The inside of the shop was even more impressive. Soft music played in the background. The walls were covered with silk and velvet. Display cases showed sparkling jewelry and watches. Everything looked perfect and costly. Brandon Knox was the manager of Stellar Elegance. He was a tall man with slicked back hair and an expensive suit. He thought he was very important because he worked with rich and powerful customers every day. When he saw Lisa walk in, he looked at her from head to toe with a frown. Lisa's simple dress and plain appearance made Brandon angry. He believed that only wealthy people should be allowed in his shop. Poor people, in his mind, made his store look bad. He walked over to Lisa with a cold expression on his face. "Excuse me," Brandon said in a rude voice. "I think you might be lost. This is a high-end boutique for exclusive customers only." Lisa looked up at him with surprise. She had been looking at a beautiful silver bracelet in one of the display cases. "Oh, I'm not lost. I wanted to look at some jewelry for my husband." Brandon laughed in a mean way. "Lady, do you see the prices here? This bracelet costs more than most people make in a year. I don't think you can afford anything in this store." Other customers in the shop started to notice what was happening. An alien couple with blue skin stopped shopping to watch. A group of wealthy humans from the inner planets turned to stare. Lisa felt embarrassed but tried to stay calm. "I have money," Lisa said quietly. "I just want to buy a gift." "Sure you do," Brandon said loudly so everyone could hear. "Let me guess. You work in the food court or maybe you clean rooms on the lower levels. People like you should shop at the discount stores down there, not bother customers up here." Lisa's face turned red, but she didn't get angry. She was used to people treating her badly because she didn't dress fancy or act important. "I understand there might be confusion, but I really would like to see some items." Brandon stepped closer to Lisa, making her feel uncomfortable. "Look, I'm trying to be nice here, but you're making my real customers uncomfortable. These people," he pointed to the other shoppers, "spend thousands of credits in my store. They don't want to shop next to someone who probably can't even afford a cup of coffee at the station cafe." An elderly human woman nearby looked shocked at Brandon's words. She whispered to her husband, "That's terrible. How can he talk to her like that?" But Brandon wasn't finished. He was enjoying the attention and wanted to make sure everyone understood that he was in charge. "I've been managing this boutique for 10 years. I know quality when I see it. And I know when someone doesn't belong." Lisa tried one more time. "Sir, I really do have the money to purchase something. Perhaps if you could just show me a few items." "No," Brandon said firmly. "I want you to leave right now. Security will escort you out if necessary. This is a respectable establishment and we have standards to maintain." The alien couple with blue skin looked at each other with confusion. In their culture, everyone was treated with respect regardless of appearance. They couldn't understand why this human was being so cruel to another human. Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she held them back. She had learned long ago that crying would only make situations like this worse. She nodded quietly and turned to leave. "And next time," Brandon called after her loudly, "think before you walk into places that are clearly above your level." Some of us work hard to create a certain atmosphere here. As Lisa walked toward the door, she heard some of the customers whispering about what they had just seen. Some looked sorry for her, while others seemed to agree with Brandon. She kept her head up and walked out with as much dignity as she could manage. Outside the boutique, Lisa stood for a moment to collect herself. She wasn't angry, just sad. This kind of thing happened to her sometimes when Jake wasn't around. People saw her simple clothes and quiet manner and assumed she wasn't important. What Brandon Knox didn't know was that Lisa Carter Morrison was married to the most respected military commander in human history. Jake Morrison had single-handedly saved Earth from 3 different alien invasions. He was loved by humans across the galaxy and respected even by former enemies. But Lisa never told people who she was married to. She wanted people to treat her well because she was a good person, not because of her husband's fame. Unfortunately, that meant dealing with people like Brandon Knox more often than she would like. Lisa decided to try a different shop. There were many stores on Star Station Aurora, and she was sure she could find something nice for Jake's birthday somewhere else. She walked away from Stellar Elegance, not knowing that several people had recorded Brandon's rude behavior on their personal devices. Within an hour, videos of the incident would be shared across the galaxy's communication networks. The story of how a boutique manager insulted Commander Morrison's wife would spread faster than anyone could imagine. But for now, Lisa just wanted to forget about Brandon Knox and find a birthday present for the man she loved. Helen Brooks sat in her office watching the security monitors of Star Station Aurora. As the station administrator, she had to keep track of everything that happened on the massive space station. Her job was to make sure all the shops, restaurants, and hotels ran smoothly for the thousands of visitors who came there every day. Helen was looking through the recordings from the morning when something caught her attention. She saw a woman in a simple blue dress being treated badly by Brandon Knox at Stellar Elegance. Helen watched the whole scene and felt sick to her stomach. She had seen Brandon be rude before, but this was much worse than usual. The woman in the video looked familiar to Helen. She zoomed in on the woman's face and felt her heart stop. It was Lisa Carter Morrison, the wife of Commander Jake Morrison. Helen had met Lisa twice before at official station events, but Lisa always dressed simply and stayed in the background. Helen grabbed her communication device with shaking hands. She tried to contact Brandon Knox immediately, but his personal communicator was turned off. She tried the boutique's main line, but no one answered. Helen felt panic rising in her chest. This was going to be a disaster. While Helen was trying to reach Brandon, he was having the best day he could remember. After throwing Lisa out of his shop, Brandon felt very proud of himself. He gathered his employees around him to tell them what had happened. "You should have seen her face," Brandon said to his assistant manager, Carol White. "She actually thought she could afford something in our store. I had to set her straight about where she belongs." Carol looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should have been nicer to her. She seemed harmless." "Harmless?" Brandon laughed. "Carol, you don't understand business like I do. If we let people like that shop here, our real customers will go somewhere else. Rich people don't want to be around poor people. It's bad for our image." Another employee, Danny Lopez, was putting away some jewelry. "But sir, what if she really did have money? Sometimes rich people dress simply." Brandon shook his head. "Trust me, I can tell the difference. I've been in this business for 10 years. That woman probably makes less in a month than we sell in an hour." What Brandon didn't know was that 3 different customers had recorded his treatment of Lisa on their personal devices. The alien couple with blue skin, whose names were Zex and Kayla, immediately sent the video to their friends back home. They were shocked by the cruelty they had witnessed. "This human treated another human so badly," Zex said to his wife as they left the boutique. "On our world, this would never happen." "We must share this story," Kayla replied. "Other beings should know how some humans treat their own kind." The elderly human couple, Robert and Mary Davis, also recorded the incident. They were from Mars and had never seen such behavior in a high-class store. Mary was so upset that she posted the video on her social media account with a message about how disappointed she was. Within 2 hours, the video had been shared thousands of times across the galaxy's networks. People were shocked by Brandon's behavior. Comments poured in from humans and aliens alike, all expressing anger at how the woman had been treated. A young reporter named Kevin Park was browsing social media when he saw the video. Something about the woman looked familiar to him. Kevin worked for Galaxy News Network and had covered many military stories. He had seen photos of Commander Morrison's wife before, though she rarely appeared in public. Kevin enhanced the video image and compared it to old photos. His eyes went wide when he realized who the woman was. He immediately started making phone calls to confirm the story. Within an hour, Kevin had verification from 3 different sources that the woman in the video was indeed Lisa Morrison. Kevin quickly wrote a news article titled, "Boutique Manager Insults War Hero's Wife." He included the video and background information about Commander Morrison's achievements. The story went viral immediately. Meanwhile, Helen Brooks was still trying to reach Brandon Knox. She had left 12 messages on his communicator and sent security guards to find him. But Brandon was in his office counting money and didn't want to be disturbed. Finally, Helen decided to go to the boutique herself. She ran through the station corridors, pushing past surprised visitors. When she arrived at Stellar Elegance, she found Brandon laughing with his employees about the morning's events. "Knox!" Helen shouted as she burst through the doors. "We need to talk right now." Brandon looked annoyed. "Helen, I'm busy with my staff. Whatever this is about can wait until tomorrow." "No, it cannot wait," Helen said, breathing heavily. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Brandon shrugged. "I threw out someone who didn't belong here. I'm protecting the reputation of this store and this station." Helen pulled out her tablet and showed Brandon the news article. "That woman you insulted is Lisa Morrison. She's married to Commander Jake Morrison, the most famous military hero in human space." Brandon's face went white. He stared at the tablet screen, reading the article over and over. The headline made him feel sick. He saw the video of himself being cruel to Lisa, and he realized how bad he looked. "This can't be right," Brandon whispered. "She looked so ordinary. She was wearing a cheap dress." "Lisa Morrison always dresses simply," Helen explained. "She doesn't like attention. She prefers to be treated like a normal person, not like the wife of a famous commander." Carol and Danny were also reading the article on their own devices. They looked terrified. Danny had served in the military before working at the boutique, and he knew exactly who Commander Morrison was. "Sir," Danny said quietly, "Commander Morrison saved my home planet from the Zephyrian invasion. He's a legend throughout the fleet. What you did to his wife? This is really bad." Brandon sat down heavily in a chair. He was starting to understand the size of his mistake. "How many people have seen this?" Helen checked her tablet. "The video has been shared over 50,000 times in the last 3 hours. The news article is being read by millions of people across the galaxy." At that moment, Brandon's communicator started ringing. He looked at it and saw calls coming in from reporters, angry customers, and even some government officials. His hands were shaking as he realized that his entire life was about to change. "What do I do?" Brandon asked Helen, panic clear in his voice. Helen looked at him with disgust. "You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate an innocent woman. Now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." Outside the boutique, word was spreading throughout Star Station Aurora about what had happened. People were starting to gather, wanting to see the place where Commander Morrison's wife had been insulted. Some were angry, others were just curious. But everyone was talking about Brandon Knox and his terrible mistake. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiant. He was returning from a peace meeting with the Altarian Council, where he had helped solve a trade dispute between 2 alien worlds. Jake was tired after 3 weeks of difficult negotiations, but he felt good about preventing another war. Jake was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. He had fought in more battles than he could count, but he always preferred talking to fighting when possible. The crew of the Defiant loved and respected him because he cared about every person under his command. "Commander," said Captain Amy Rodriguez, his second in command, "we'll reach Earth orbit in 6 hours. I'm sure you're excited to see Lisa again." Jake smiled for the first time in days. "Yes, I've missed her," 3 weeks feels like 3 months when you're away from the person you love. Amy nodded. She had served with Jake for 8 years and knew how much he adored his wife. Lisa was the only person who could make the famous commander completely relax and forget about his responsibilities for a while. Lieutenant Ben Hayes was working at the communication station when his personal device started buzzing with messages. Ben was young and energetic, and he often checked social media during quiet moments. What he saw on his screen made him gasp out loud. "Sir," Ben said, his voice shaking, "you need to see this right away." Jake walked over to Ben's station. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Ben showed Jake his tablet. On the screen was a video of Lisa being insulted and thrown out of a boutique on Star Station Aurora. Jake watched the entire recording without saying a word, but Amy could see his jaw getting tighter with each passing second. "When did this happen?" Jake asked quietly. "Yesterday, sir," Ben replied. "The video has been shared by millions of people. Everyone in the galaxy is talking about it." Jake watched the video again, paying close attention to how the boutique manager treated his wife. He saw Lisa trying to stay calm and polite even as the man humiliated her in front of other customers. Jake's hands formed fists at his sides. Amy had also watched the video. "Sir, this is outrageous. No one should treat Lisa like that. No one should treat anyone like that." Other crew members were gathering around, having heard about the incident from their own social media feeds. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez, who had served with Jake for 10 years, was furious. "Commander, just say the word and we'll make that station manager regret the day he was born," Tony said. Jake held up his hand for silence. "No, we don't solve problems with threats or violence unless it's absolutely necessary. This isn't a military matter." "But sir," said Medical Officer Susan Price, "he insulted your wife. He insulted you by extension. The whole crew is angry about this." Jake sat down in his command chair and thought for a moment. He was angry, but he was also proud of how Lisa had handled herself. She had kept her dignity even when faced with cruelty and ignorance. "Lisa wouldn't want us to hurt anyone because of this," Jake said finally. "She's stronger than people think. She can handle one rude shop manager." But even as Jake said these words, his communicator was buzzing with messages from other military commanders, government officials, and alien leaders who had seen the video. Jake realized this incident was becoming much bigger than just one man's bad behavior. Admiral Patricia Wells, the head of the Human Defense Fleet, called Jake directly. Her face appeared on the main screen of the bridge and she looked very serious. "Jake, I just saw the video of what happened to Lisa," Admiral Wells said. "This is completely unacceptable. That manager's behavior reflects badly on all of humanity." "I appreciate your concern, Admiral," Jake replied. "But Lisa and I can handle this ourselves." "I'm afraid it's gone beyond that," Admiral Wells said. "I've been getting calls from alien ambassadors all day. They're shocked by how your wife was treated. Some are questioning whether humans really believe in the equality and respect we claim to value." Jake frowned. He hadn't considered how this incident might affect humanity's relationships with other species. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I'm suggesting that this Brandon Knox character has made himself a problem for all of humanity, not just your family," Admiral Wells replied. "I'm going to investigate his background and see what else we can find." After ending the call with Admiral Wells, Jake contacted Lisa directly. Her face appeared on his personal communicator, and he could see that she was trying to act normal, despite what had happened. "Hello, darling," Lisa said with a smile. "How was your meeting with the Altarians?" "Lisa, I saw the video from Star Station Aurora," Jake said gently. "Are you okay?" Lisa's smile faded slightly. "Oh, that. It wasn't pleasant, but I'm fine. These things happen sometimes when you're not around." "These things shouldn't happen at all," Jake said firmly. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you." "Jake, you can't protect me from every rude person in the galaxy," Lisa said. "And I don't want you to try. I knew what I was getting into when I married a famous man." Jake admired his wife's strength, but he also felt guilty. Lisa dealt with problems like this because she refused to use his name and reputation to get special treatment. She wanted to be judged as herself, not as the wife of a war hero. While Jake was talking to Lisa, his crew was busy sharing the story with their friends and families throughout the military. Soon, thousands of soldiers, sailors, and pilots across human space had seen the video of their beloved commander's wife being mistreated. Sergeant Mike Thompson was a Marine who had served under Jake during the war against the Shadow Collective. When he saw the video, he immediately called his old squadmates. "Did you guys see what happened to Commander Morrison's wife?" Mike asked during a video call with 5 other veterans. "Yeah, I saw it," replied Corporal Lisa Wong. "That boutique manager has no idea who he messed with. Commander Morrison saved all our lives during the Battle of Kepler Station." The veterans started sharing stories about Jake Morrison's kindness and leadership. They remembered how he had visited wounded soldiers in hospitals, how he had personally written letters to the families of fallen troops, and how he had always put his people before himself. "You know what makes this worse?" said Staff Sergeant Carlos Rivera. "Mrs. Morrison volunteers at the Veterans Hospital on Earth. She spends her free time helping soldiers who got hurt in the wars her husband fought. She's as good as he is." Word of Brandon Knox's behavior was spreading through the military like wildfire. Soldiers were posting their own videos, sharing stories about the Morrison family, and expressing their anger at how Lisa had been treated. Back on the Defiant, Jake was reading reports about how the incident was affecting diplomatic relations. The Centauri Federation had issued a statement expressing their disappointment in human behavior. The Zephyrian Empire, which Jake had once fought against, had sent a message saying they were surprised that humans would treat their heroes' families so poorly. Jake realized that this simple act of rudeness by one boutique manager was becoming a test of humanity's character. The galaxy was watching to see how humans would respond to one of their own being mistreated. Amy approached Jake's chair. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jake stood up and looked out at the stars. "We continue to Earth as planned, but I want you to prepare a statement for the press. It's time for me to address this situation publicly." "What will you say, sir?" Amy asked. Jake thought about his wife's dignity, his crew's loyalty, and humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. "I'll remind everyone what we really stand for." On the planet Altair Prime, Council Leader Thane was watching the video of Lisa Morrison being insulted for the 5th time. The tall, blue-skinned alien leader felt deep anger at what he was seeing. Jake Morrison had saved Altair Prime from complete destruction during the Crystalline Hive invasion 3 years ago. Without Morrison's brilliant military strategy, Thane's entire species would have been extinct. "This is unacceptable," Thane said to his assistant Vex. "Commander Morrison's family should be honored throughout the galaxy, not treated like this." Vex nodded in agreement. "The human Brandon Knox has shown great disrespect. What should we do about it?" Thane thought for a moment. The Altarian Council controlled trade routes that were very important to human businesses. They could make life very difficult for people who insulted their friends. "Send a message to all Altarian merchants," Thane ordered. "No one from our species will do business with Star Station Aurora until this Brandon Knox is removed from his position. We will also ban him from entering any Altarian territory for the rest of his life." The news of the Altarian trade ban spread quickly through business networks. Star Station Aurora made millions of credits every month from Altarian customers who came there to shop and vacation. Losing all that business would be a financial disaster. On the peaceful world of Centauri 7, Ambassador Sarah Kim was meeting with the Centauri Federation Council. The Centauri were a wise and gentle species who valued kindness above all other qualities. They had been allies with humanity for over 50 years. "The video of this incident troubles us deeply," said Elder Yanni, the oldest member of the Centauri Council. "We believed humans shared our values of treating all people with respect." Ambassador Kim felt embarrassed. "Elder Yanni, please don't judge all humans by the actions of one terrible person. Brandon Knox does not represent our species." "We understand this," Elder Yanni replied, "but we are concerned about doing business with places where such behavior is tolerated. Commander Morrison saved our colony ships during the Shadow War. His wife should be treated like royalty wherever she goes." The Centauri Federation announced they would stop all vacation trips to Star Station Aurora until the situation was resolved. They also said they would review their trade agreements with any human businesses that continued to work with the station. Meanwhile, on the war-torn planet of Zephyr, former General Krex was reading about the incident with great interest. Krex had fought against Jake Morrison during the Zephyrian invasion of human space. Morrison had defeated Krex's forces, but he had also shown mercy to captured Zephyrian soldiers and helped negotiate a peace treaty. Even we, his former enemies, know to respect Morrison and his family, Krex said to his aide. This human boutique manager is either very stupid or very ignorant. Krex decided to make a public statement. As a former enemy who had learned to respect Morrison, his words would carry special weight. Commander Morrison defeated me in battle, but he treated my soldiers with honor even in defeat, Krex announced on galactic news networks. Any being who insults his family insults the concept of honor itself. This Brandon Knox has shown that some humans have forgotten the values their greatest hero represents. Back on Star Station Aurora, Brandon Knox was hiding in his office, afraid to come out. His personal communicator had received over 3,000 angry messages in the past day. His business email was full of cancellation notices from alien customers, who no longer wanted to shop at Stellar Elegance. Carol White, his assistant manager, knocked on his office door. "Sir, we have a problem. 3 Altarian families just canceled their orders for next week. That's 50,000 credits worth of sales." Brandon opened the door a crack. "What did you tell them?" "They said they won't do business with us anymore, because of what you did to Mrs. Morrison," Carol replied. "Sir, half our alien customers have stopped coming to the store. The other half keep asking about the incident." Brandon felt sick to his stomach. Alien customers made up 60% of his boutique's business. Without them, Stellar Elegance would have to close within a month. Danny Lopez came running up to the office. "Sir, the Centauri tour groups have all canceled their shopping visits. That's 30 groups scheduled for this month alone." Brandon sat down heavily in his chair. He was starting to understand that his treatment of Lisa Morrison was going to cost him everything he had worked for. Helen Brooks, the station administrator, was dealing with her own crisis. Her communication system was overloaded with calls from alien governments, human officials, and news reporters. The incident at Stellar Elegance was becoming an intergalactic diplomatic problem. "Helen," said her assistant, Mark Johnson, "the Altarian embassy is demanding that we remove Brandon Knox from the station immediately. The Centauri Federation is threatening to end all trade agreements with us." Helen rubbed her temples, feeling a massive headache coming on. "What about our human customers? Are they upset too?" "Even worse," Mark replied. "Military families are organizing boycotts. Veterans groups are calling for protests. The video has been shared by over 10 million people now." At the same time, alien news networks were covering the story extensively. On Altarian television, news anchor Zara spoke about the incident with obvious anger. "This human manager's behavior shows a lack of basic decency," Zara told her audience. "Commander Morrison saved millions of Altarian lives, yet his wife was, treated worse than a criminal. We must ask ourselves, do humans really believe in the equality they claim to value?" Similar reports were playing on Centauri, Zephyrian, and dozens of other alien news channels. The story was becoming a symbol of human hypocrisy to many alien species. Dr. Elena Torres, a human diplomat stationed on Centauri 7, was working desperately to control the damage. She had spent years building trust between humans and aliens, and one boutique manager's stupidity was destroying all her hard work. "The Centauri Council is very upset," Dr. Torres reported to Earth's Foreign Ministry. "They're questioning whether they should continue their alliance with humanity if this is how we treat our own heroes' families." On the military world of Kepler Station, where Jake Morrison had won one of his greatest victories, soldiers were gathering to discuss the incident. Sergeant Major Paula Jackson, who had served with Morrison during the Shadow War, was addressing a group of veterans. "Commander Morrison never asked for special treatment for himself," Paula said, "but his wife shouldn't have to suffer because she married a hero. She volunteers at our hospitals, helps military families, and never asks for anything in return." Veterans decided to organize their own response to the incident. They would make sure everyone knew what kind of person Lisa Morrison really was. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Wilson, who commanded a base near Star Station Aurora, made his own decision. No military personnel will be allowed to shop at Stellar Elegance, he announced to his troops. We don't support businesses that insult our leaders' families. Similar orders were being issued at military bases throughout human space. The armed forces were sending a clear message about how they felt about Brandon Knox's behavior. Meanwhile, civilian protests were starting to form outside Star Station Aurora. Families of soldiers, veterans, and ordinary citizens who respected Commander Morrison were demanding that Brandon Knox be fired and banned from the station. Inside the station, other shop owners were getting angry with Brandon. His actions were hurting all their businesses as alien customers stayed away and human customers organized boycotts. Marcus Brown, who owned a restaurant near Stellar Elegance, confronted Brandon in the corridor. Your stupidity is costing all of us money, Marcus said angrily. Alien customers made up 40% of my business. Now they won't even come to this section of the station. Brandon tried to defend himself. How was I supposed to know who she was? She looked like any other poor person. That's exactly the problem, Marcus replied. You judged her by her appearance instead of treating her with basic respect. Now we're all paying for your mistake. As the day ended, Brandon Knox sat alone in his boutique watching his life fall apart. Orders were being canceled, customers were staying away, and his reputation was destroyed. He was beginning to realize that insulting the wrong person could have consequences he never imagined. Outside his shop, the galaxy was watching and waiting to see how humanity would respond to this test of their character. The UES Defiant arrived at Star Station Aurora 3 days after the incident. Word spread through the station like wildfire that Commander Jake Morrison was coming aboard. People gathered in the docking bay areas, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous military hero. Brandon Knox was in his boutique when he heard the announcement over the station's communication system. Attention all residents and visitors. Commander Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant has arrived for a brief visit. Brandon felt his blood turn to ice. He had been hiding in his shop for 3 days, afraid to go outside because angry people kept yelling at him in the corridors. Now the husband of the woman he had insulted was actually on the station. Sir, what should we do? Asked Carol White, his assistant manager. She looked terrified. Just keep the shop closed, Brandon said, his voice shaking. Maybe he won't come here. But Carol was looking out the shop window. Sir, I think it's too late for that. Brandon looked outside and saw a crowd of people gathering in the main corridor. At the center of the crowd was a tall man in a blue military uniform. Even from a distance, Brandon could tell this was Jake Morrison. The commander walked with confidence and authority, and everyone around him seemed to respect him greatly. Walking beside Jake was Lisa Morrison, wearing another simple dress but smiling happily at her husband. Brandon felt sick when he saw her. She looked so normal and pleasant. How could he have been so wrong about her? Jake and Lisa were not coming to the boutique. They were just walking through the station on their way to dinner at one of the restaurants. But as they passed by Stellar Elegance, several alien dignitaries approached them. The first to speak was Ambassador Thexler from the Zephyrian Empire. Thexler was a tall, gray-skinned alien who wore elaborate robes. He had once been Jake's enemy, but now he respected the human commander greatly. Commander Morrison, Thexler said in his deep voice, I wish to apologize on behalf of all civilized beings for the shameful treatment your wife received in this establishment. Jake stopped walking and looked at the ambassador with surprise. Ambassador Thexler, that's very kind of you, but you have nothing to apologize for. On the contrary, Thexler replied, you showed mercy to my people when you could have destroyed us. You taught us about honor and respect. To see your family treated without these same values is deeply troubling. Lisa stepped forward and smiled at the alien ambassador. Thank you for your concern, Ambassador. Your words mean a great deal to me. Other alien dignitaries began approaching. Elder Yanni from the Centauri Federation was there, along with Council Leader Thane from Altair Prime. Each of them wanted to personally apologize to Lisa for what had happened. Mrs. Morrison, said Elder Yanni, Your husband saved our colony ships during the Shadow War. Without his courage, 1,000,000 Centauri children would have died. You should be honored wherever you go, not insulted by ignorant fools." Brandon watched. All this from inside his boutique, feeling smaller and smaller with each passing moment. He could see alien leaders who controlled entire star systems bowing respectfully to the woman he had thrown out of his shop. Council Leader Thane spoke next. "Commander Morrison, we have banned this Brandon Knox from all Altarian worlds. He will never again profit from our friendship with humanity." Jake looked uncomfortable with all the attention and apologies. "Please, all of you, this isn't necessary. One person's bad behavior doesn't represent your species or mine. But it does matter," said Thexler. "How we treat the families of heroes shows what kind of people we truly are. This boutique manager failed that test badly." A crowd of humans had also gathered around Jake and Lisa. Many of them were veterans who had served under Jake's command. Others were civilians who simply wanted to show their respect. Sergeant Major Paula Jackson stepped forward from the crowd. "Commander, sir, the entire veteran community is outraged by what happened to Mrs. Morrison. We want you to know that we stand with your family." Jake shook Paula's hand warmly. "Thank you, Sergeant Major, but Lisa and I don't want anyone to feel they need to fight our battles for us." "With respect, sir," Paula replied. "This isn't just about you and Mrs. Morrison anymore. It's about how we treat people in general. That boutique manager judged Mrs. Morrison by her clothes instead of her character. That's not the way humans should behave." Lisa looked around at all the people who had gathered to support her and felt tears in her eyes. She had never wanted this much attention, but she was touched by how many people cared about her and Jake. Inside Stellar Elegance, Brandon Knox was watching this scene and finally understanding the full scope of his mistake. He wasn't just dealing with an angry husband. He had insulted someone who was loved and respected by beings across the entire galaxy. Carol White was also watching. "Sir, I think we should close the boutique permanently. No one is ever going to shop here again after this." Brandon nodded slowly. "You're probably right. My career is over." Danny Lopez, who had been quiet for days, finally spoke up. "Sir, maybe you should go out there and apologize. It might not fix everything, but it's the right thing to do." Brandon looked at Danny with surprise. "Are you crazy? I can't face all those people. They hate me." "They hate what you did," Danny replied. "But maybe if you showed some real remorse, they might forgive you eventually." Brandon thought about this for a moment. He was scared to face Jake Morrison and all those angry people, but he also knew that hiding in his shop forever wasn't going to solve anything. Meanwhile, outside in the corridor, Helen Brooks approached Jake and Lisa. "Commander Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, I want to personally apologize for what happened on my station. Brandon Knox's behavior was completely unacceptable." "Thank you, Administrator Brooks," Jake replied. "But what happened wasn't your fault. You can't control every person's behavior." "Actually, I can control who has businesses on my station," Helen said firmly. "Brandon Knox's lease will not be renewed. Stellar Elegance will be closed permanently." Several people in the crowd cheered when they heard this announcement. Brandon, listening from inside his shop, felt his last hope disappear. Ambassador Thexler spoke again. "Commander Morrison, your response to this incident has been most impressive. A lesser being might have sought revenge. Instead, you show wisdom and restraint." "Revenge doesn't solve problems," Jake replied. "It usually just creates new ones. The best response to hatred is to show a better way." Lisa squeezed her husband's hand. She was proud of how he was handling this difficult situation. Even when people attacked his family, Jake remained calm and thoughtful. At that moment, the door to Stellar Elegance opened slowly. Brandon Knox stepped out, looking pale and frightened. The crowd grew quiet as they saw the man who had caused all this trouble. Brandon walked slowly toward Jake and Lisa, his hands shaking. Every eye in the corridor was watching him. He could feel the anger and disappointment from dozens of people, both human and alien. When Brandon reached Jake and Lisa, he stopped and took a deep breath. This was the most important moment of his life, and he knew that what he said next would determine his future. "Commander Morrison, Mrs. Morrison," Brandon said quietly, "I need to apologize for my terrible behavior. I was wrong. And I'm deeply sorry. The corridor was completely silent as everyone waited to see what would happen next. The corridor was completely silent as Brandon Knox stood before Jake and Lisa Morrison. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. Everyone in the crowd was watching to see what Commander Morrison would do to the man who had insulted his wife. Jake looked at Brandon for a long moment without speaking. The boutique manager was clearly terrified, but he had found the courage to come out and face the consequences of his actions. Jake respected that, even though he was still angry about what had happened to Lisa. "Mr. Knox," Jake said quietly, "I appreciate you coming out to apologize. That took courage." Brandon felt a small spark of hope. "Sir, I know what I did was terrible. I judged your wife by her appearance instead of treating her with respect. I was completely wrong." Lisa stepped forward. "Mr. Knox, I accept your apology, but I want you to understand something. You didn't just hurt me that day. You hurt the idea that all people deserve to be treated with dignity." Brandon nodded, tears starting to form in his eyes. "I understand that now, Mrs. Morrison. I've learned a very hard lesson about how my actions affect others." Ambassador Thexler spoke from the crowd. "Commander Morrison, what this being did to your family was an insult to all of us who respect you. How do you wish us to respond?" Jake turned to address not just Thexler but everyone gathered in the corridor. "I want you all to listen carefully. What happened to my wife was wrong, and Mr. Knox has admitted that. But I don't want revenge. I want something much more important." The crowd leaned in closer to hear what the famous commander would say. "I want us all to remember that how we treat each other, especially when no one famous is watching, shows who we really are." Jake continued. "Lisa was mistreated not because she's my wife, but because Mr. Knox thought she wasn't important enough to deserve respect." Elder Yanni from the Centauri Federation nodded approvingly. "Wise words, Commander Morrison. This is why our species admires humanity so much." Jake looked directly at Brandon. "Mr. Knox, I don't want you destroyed or banned from every planet in the galaxy. I want you to become a better person. Can you do that?" Brandon wiped tears from his eyes. "Yes, sir. I promise I will try to be better. I've seen how wrong I was, and I never want to hurt anyone like this again." Council Leader Thane stepped forward. "Commander Morrison, your mercy honors you, but this being must still face consequences for his actions." "He will," said Helen Brooks, the station administrator. "Mr. Knox's lease is terminated. Stellar Elegance is closed permanently, but I have another announcement to make." Helen looked around at the crowd. "I've been thinking about how to prevent incidents like this in the future. I'm creating a new position on this station. We will have a director of guest relations whose job is to make sure every visitor, regardless of their appearance or background, is treated with respect." She turned to look at Danny Lopez, who was standing with the other boutique employees. "Mr. Lopez, you served in the military and you tried to convince Mr. Knox to treat Mrs. Morrison better. Would you be interested in this new position?" Danny's eyes went wide with surprise. "Ma'am, I would be honored to accept that position." The crowd applauded Danny's appointment. Several veterans in the group nodded approvingly at Helen's decision to hire someone who understood the values they were fighting for. Jake raised his hand for silence. "I want to say something else. This incident has brought people together in an unexpected way. Humans and aliens, military and civilian, all united in the belief that everyone deserves basic respect." Ambassador Thexler spoke again. "Commander Morrison, your response to this crisis has reminded us why we respect humanity so much. You could have demanded punishment, but instead you chose to teach a lesson about forgiveness and growth." Lisa smiled at her husband, proud of how he was handling this difficult situation. "Jake always says that our enemies become our friends when we show them a better way to live." Brandon Knox was still standing nearby, unsure of what to do next. Jake noticed him and walked over. "Mr. Knox," Jake said, "you made a serious mistake, but everyone deserves a chance to learn from their errors. What will you do now?" Brandon thought for a moment. "Sir, I want to spend some time thinking about what I've learned. Maybe I can find a way to help other people avoid making the same mistakes I did." That sounds like a good plan, Jake replied. Real change takes time and effort, but it's possible if you're sincere about it. Dr. Elena Torres, the human diplomat, had arrived during the conversation. She addressed the alien dignitaries. This incident shows both the worst and best of humanity. Mr. Knox's behavior was shameful, but Commander Morrison's response shows our true values. Elder Yanni nodded. Dr. Torres, we are satisfied with how this situation has been handled. The Centauri Federation will resume normal relations with Star Station Aurora, Council Leader Thane agreed. The Altarian Council will also lift our trade restrictions. Commander Morrison's wisdom has restored our faith in human leadership. Even Ambassador Thexler, representing humanity's former enemies, was impressed. The Zephyrian Empire respects how Commander Morrison chose education over revenge. This is why we now call him friend instead of enemy. As the crowd began to disperse, many people stopped to speak with Jake and Lisa personally. Veterans thanked them for their service, civilians expressed their admiration, and aliens shared stories about how Jake had helped their worlds. Sergeant Major Paula Jackson approached Lisa. Mrs. Morrison, the veteran community wants you to know that we consider you family. What happened to you happened to all of us. Lisa was touched by Paula's words. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Knowing that so many people care means everything to me. Helen Brooks made one final announcement. The space where Stellar Elegance used to be will become the Morrison Memorial Gallery. It will display stories about military families and the sacrifices they make for all of us. Jake looked surprised. Administrator Brooks, that's very generous. But we don't need a memorial. It's not about what you need, Helen replied. It's about what we need. We need to remember this lesson about treating everyone with dignity and respect. As the day ended, Brandon Knox cleaned out his former boutique with the help of Carol and Danny. He was unemployed and facing an uncertain future, but he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Danny, Brandon said as they packed up the last items, thank you for encouraging me to apologize. It was the right thing to do. Danny nodded. Everyone makes mistakes, Mr. Knox. What matters is what we do after we realize we were wrong. Carol agreed. Maybe you can find a new job where you can put your retail experience to good use, but with a better attitude toward customers. Meanwhile, Jake and Lisa were having dinner at a quiet restaurant on the station. They were finally alone together after all the public attention. Are you okay with how this all turned out? Jake asked his wife. Lisa smiled. I'm proud of you for handling it the way you did. You turned an ugly incident into a teaching moment for the entire galaxy. I learned that from you, Jake replied. You've always treated everyone with kindness, regardless of who they are or how they treat you. Outside the restaurant, beings from dozens of different worlds were going about their business on Star Station Aurora. But something had changed. People were being more polite to each other, more patient with strangers, and more aware of how their actions affected others. The story of what happened at Stellar Elegance spread throughout the galaxy. But it wasn't just a story about one man's mistake. It became a story about forgiveness, growth, and the idea that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And in a small office near the former boutique, Danny Lopez was preparing for his new job as Director of Guest Relations, ready to make sure that no visitor to Star Station Aurora would ever again be judged by their appearance rather than their character. The incident was over, but the lessons it taught would last forever.